Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Social Pillar. We're live. We're here. Good evening.
We live. We breathe.
Hello.
Hello, and we have people. All of us. The four of us who have been here the whole time. What are you talking about? I don't know. Hey, nothing new here tonight. But hello, everybody, and welcome to the Social Pillar, our ongoing conversation about the value of role-playing games, their crafts, communities, cultures, all the C's. Wait, not all the C's. A number of the C's.
The 7 of them.
Yeah, the good C's, yeah. Before we get started, I would like to acknowledge that we are coming to you from Aboriginal land. Always was, always will be, and sovereignty was never ceded. I am coming to you from Darugland, and we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land that we're streaming to you from, pay our respects to elders past and present, and also extend those respects to any First Nations people who are watching at the moment. Because the Aboriginal people were the original storytellers, which I love.
Yeah. Baby.
We are here. It is season 2, episode 10 of that. Amazing.
Correct.
We did it. I'm not quite sure how, but we did it. Yeah. It's a decade. There are the 3 of us who are normally here, despite my pathetic attempt to gaslight all your incredibly smart, clever, perceptive peoples. I am OMGM, as always, the one who thinks they're funny, possibly is not. Joining me is, to my other side, we're going to go Ian.
Hi, I'm Ian. I'm Ian Zammit. I'm a role-playing game Dungeon Master, Games Master for many years. I run a company called Roleplay Experience, helping introduce role-playing games to people, connect them together, and help just to build the conversation of this. And I am delighted to be able to continue doing this through the Social Pillar with our awesome Forever GMs, and with our guest tonight, which I'm looking forward to having a chat to him. That's enough about me, but I hand over to Jared.
Jared.
Hello. It's me, Jared.
I'm sorry, I don't know where
chef.
you came from.
Hello. I can't. Not at the end of the day. The Game Master Chef, that's me. Hello. Welcome. Tonight I wanted to share some experiences with not just our 3 perspectives and opinions, but also someone who has been a player of mine for a long time, who I've had the pleasure of playing under, and someone who has not only brought me many insights and various perspectives, but I just love to talk role-playing games with. So here tonight joining us is Ben, a veteran DM, a wonderful player, and a goddamn
veteran. Old.
Yes.
Welcome, Ben.
Welcome, Ben. It's a pleasure
Thank
to
you.
have
Great to be here. I don't have any accolades like you guys do, but I have been hyper fixated on tabletop RPG since I was like 14. So I've been doing it a little while.
It is an absolute pleasure. And
Thanks for having me.
I think there's a reason that we wanted to have someone who has experience playing both over and under the DM, and for some reason that's just tickled me as a visual image. Why did we select this particular wonderful, incredible guest, Jared?
Oh, he's brilliant. He's great. They're so as a forever DM, I know we like to joke about that label, and we are, those who have taken on the Game Master DM mantle for, extended periods of time across many campaigns. I find that sometimes for myself, it's a struggle to also play as well. And I always tend to say that I like to play under certain DMs, Ian being one of them, Ben certainly being another. Theo as well. I have played under.
Good save.
Moving right along.
All
the people who join us tonight, I've had the honor of being a player under me.
Also, some people in chat as well. Just digging.
Yeah.
And all the wonderful DMs who are out there.
Yeah.
If you've
never had a bad experience.
Thank you. I do find that I need a certain kind of group, a certain kind of engagement in order to calm down the mad sort of game master mind, where I want to influence and want to push around and do all sorts of things, not push around the players, but like I want to be involved a lot more and have a bit more agency than just my character. And having had a brief chat to Ben about this, it definitely came across as a wonderful perspective where, Ben, you've said that you think about playing a little bit differently, having DM'd, and I appreciate that massively when you are playing at my tables, because I do know that you've got the DM's perspective. You're also seeing the pacing of the session, where the spotlight is shared, where the cooperation, the team building is. So I really just wanted to, you're kind of like an inside man. And then also you're the first person I think of whenever I get new players or someone who's trying something out. I always want to make sure that they're sat next to you. And whether or not I've intentionally done that, you do seem to very quickly kind of become this coach and this mentor for new players as well. And I'm glad that you do that. So, we just
that's kind of pick your brains about that. For those who are listening, when we do get the podcast happening, we are talking about, because did we change the title? Oh, we did change the title of the stream.
I'm almost like a professional producer now. It's great.
Amazing. That sounded really sarcastic and I didn't actually mean it to. I'm very sorry. But we're talking about how being a DM or a GM influences your player style. And some of the things that it can bring, that you bring to that, because I think all of us love the opportunities when we get to be a player. And we've probably decided that everyone's a bit sick of hearing us just talk about our opinions. And so we thought we would bring
very likely.
I don't think so. They keep turning up. So
yeah.
No, I definitely didn't always have it that way. Like when I was in that forever DM camp for some time as like one of the people in the friend group who was really pushing, wanting to get this going. I was introduced to D&D, advanced D&D by my uncle when I was quite young, and didn't actually get to play it. We just made a bunch of characters, that sort of thing. And then I started running it myself in 4th edition. And I ran sessions. I was the DM for a number of years until one of my friends decided that he was going to run it, and I was so excited to be a player. And I was like, I'm going to make this, because it is hard DMing for the first time for players who've never played before.
Yes.
I feel like that's the hardest part is in all of D&D, because they're everywhere and you're only here. So it's crazy.
Impressive.
And
kids got it easy these days.
Yeah. Kids got it easy these days. So I really went into wanting to be a great player for this new GM who I'd been the GM for. And I failed completely. We got into this. He was running a Game of Thrones style game. And we were in it, and I was like, I'm gonna really help this out. And we, long story short, we found a Valyrian blade, and we're like, this is, for anybody who knows, this is a big deal. These are priceless. I was off the rails. I was suddenly running into the shops, trying to find a cart. He's like, oh, do you want to go down this way? No, we're getting a cart. We're gonna become rich and famous. I didn't take it as far as the other players. I ran into town to get the cart. They all killed each other over the blade. It was the end of the campaign, and I felt really bad that I didn't try and help him get us back on track as we got on. So that was really like an awakening moment for me when it came to then being in games with other people. And since then, it's been a lot better, where you're really trying to help out. And I tried to take on as many games as possible, and you just can't DM as much as you have an appetite for, because it takes a lot of time and playing. I don't want to say it's easier, but it is a little bit less demanding on your time. You as long as you still do a little bit of prep to it, but it's not nearly as, you don't need to have as much in your head going into it. So
Absolutely.
I can get more out of the game by going in. So I really need that mix to be able to satiate the appetite.
I agree. Can I go back to one thing? Because I was really interested. I want to talk about your first game, because I think we've all experienced the bite of the Chaos Gods when you get to be a player. And because we've all recently played with an AI DM, which was a lot of fun.
Oh, nice.
But I noticed that I was also a fairly chaotic beast in that.
Yeah.
Why is it you think that a lot of the time when you've been a DM for a long time, you might be tempted to go super chaos?
It's immersion, man.
Yeah.
Like, you're just like, as soon as you're like in, because I didn't see anything but like the riches and things that we could have now that we had this amazing thing. And like, I knew I wasn't going as far as this is what my character would do, which is I think what happened at the camp after I left to go haggle and get us a cart that we could safely extract this blade from. But it's immersion. Once you're in there and you're really you're wanting to really expand what you've got. And if you don't have that experienced DM to try and rein things in and bring you back to a sense of, we're being a bit crazy here, or can adjust. Like if it was a more experienced DM, then maybe bandits could have dropped onto us and taken the blade from us once they saw that it was going out of control. But I feel like immersion is the key thing in that once you're in there. But I think with the AI, it might be a little bit different because that's less of a I'm here to help them out, and it's more like I'm gonna test this person. Maybe the
Well, I think that's really interesting because you're talking about empathy, right? Sorry, guys, please do jump in over the top. You know how excited I get.
Yeah, I'm just saying, please just tell me to stop. They put up a hand.
I'm waiting for my right time to strike.
Which actually talks a lot about our play styles too. But I think it's that level of empathy that you have having been a GM or a DM that you do want to help out the Dungeon Master, which, and I'm not saying that players aren't empathic, but I noticed that even with our AI DM, we were a little bit, but it's probably more because we wanted to shape the game around it, but we were trying to help it out.
We did put ourselves in its perspective, and we were trying to, again, as 3 GMs who were playing, we were very much I think our first experimental game, by the end of it, when we were saying, oh, well, this was an interesting thing that it did, and we had the theory of, man, that would have been a cool thing to bring this back around, or it could have just been the AI going, no, that NPC's here now. We didn't really know, but we were thinking that as players. So I think, because you have that GM perspective of all the potentialities and all of the improvised routes, the waveform collapsing as it would be, to have that as a player as well. You're not just looking beyond, this is what's in front of me, this is how I interact with it.
I had a question for you as well, Ben, actually, on that, because it's interesting that we talked about that AIGM experience that we had. How long have you been playing for? How many years?
Gosh, maybe 6 or 7, maybe 6
or 7 years.
Yeah,
how much
intermittently, but yeah.
How much as a GM have you been in that?
Probably
time?
6 is really my age. I mean, off and on since I was 14, so I guess 17 years or something like that.
Oh, right. Okay, cool. So I guess then, because we were talking about that from a perspective of this being 3 GMs who are playing. So that's a whole different thing, because then we know that we've got some experience together and we know some of the basic rules and also etiquette of play, I think. Yeah. So that experience of being a DM as a player or other ones, what have you found that when you know that the others aren't GMs, how has that affected you and how you play?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you constantly, now that I'm a bit more experienced in it, you have that mindset of I'm going to keep this rolling, because I think it's really great when players all stop in and role play with each other and it keeps bouncing off. But you can quickly tell as a GM, you're like, this is not moving the story along, or this is and that really takes, I think, some emotional intelligence, because you don't want to kick somebody's fun. And so if they're really enjoying this and you're seeing that they're really enjoying this, but if you're seeing that we're kind of going around in circles and you can see that the GM is also hoping to move things along, then you can push that avenue. But Jared and I had a situation in a one-shot recently where it's a one-shot. You've got to keep things moving, especially in that. So it's like,
I find
that's sort of guiding them down. Maybe we should go this way, because that's clearly the way the GM wants us to go.
I think you'd also agree, Ben, having seen my GMing style, I do like to let go a little bit more. And then I do realize that a lot of the campaigns I run seem to drag on, especially if I run a module, other people seem to run that module in a far tighter time frame. And whether that's me wanting to role play or just, let things kind of meander a little bit. I have said recently to a group, well, I just want to check in, because I do realize that we do a lot of talking about what could, should, and would happen, and it's a lot of planning. It's somewhat in character as well, but I did just want to check in with them, because I'm like, guys, we're going to be playing this module at this rate bi-weekly. We play fortnightly, and sometimes if we miss a session, it's another, so we don't have all that frequent contact time. So I'm realizing that if an entire or half a session is, okay, we're in the tavern, we've woken up and we're going to discuss what the plan is for the day. If the first hour of a 2.5 hour session is them going, right, well, we needed to interact with this person, but also we could really try and repair this relationship and all of that. And then I just checked in and I was like, guys, is that what you guys want to do? Do you want me to drive it forward? Would you rather have, one of these NPCs like burst the door open and be like, seize him, what do you is that what you want? And they were like, yes and no. They're like, look, if you feel like that there's an opportune moment for that, and you feel like it is going to be driving things forward, great. But at the same time, allowing them to create their own fun and choose their own path, that's far more my style. And this is definitely running for 3 newer players and someone who has DM before and has very good knowledge of the rules. So is always looking to use the rules in fun ways. And that's their style and that's their fun. So yeah, it's nice. It is nice to know that there are players who can see that perspective as well, and also help drive things along when I might let go of the reins. Someone is there to just kind of help guide things along for sure.
It makes me think of that moment that we had in Descent into Avernus, where we got all of the players to write down 2 goals. Like we gathered all of the players up and we're like in character saying, what do each of our players actually want? Like, let's write these down. Do we want to save this place? Do we want to get out of here? And we all like shared our goals to each other. That was so good of just like find out what the players were actually want.
I like to always check in with players every couple of sessions, like every 10 sessions or so. What kind of magic items do you want? So that I have an idea of like what kind of loot you'd be actually interested in, instead of me going, that's a cool druid thing. I'm not going to use that. It's generally not a miss situation. You can get a pretty rough idea, but if they do want something in particular, like I know in our Spelljammer game, everybody wants some kind of a breathing apparatus for when they're floating out in space. So there's spells, there's like creatures you can get, and there's, we've got options. So same thing, like checking in with motivation, like what are people enjoying about where you're at, and what do the characters actually want to achieve? Like, is there, and like I think having like 2 or 3, is there a short and long term goal, and then a party oriented goal? Would be how I would
really
frame it. Yeah.
I mean, I think having sort of bringing that GM sensibility and understanding how gameplay progresses, because we've had a couple of chats about, how you structure a story, how you pull things together, 3-act, 4-act, 5-act, all that sort of thing. But I guess the other side of having sort of a more in-depth understanding is you kind of understand how rules work and you kind of understand how mechanics work. Do you find yourself as a, someone who's more experienced as a GM, kind of falling into that role of explaining things to some players sometimes? Or
too much? I think that's definitely a weakness of mine. I just need to shut my mouth. But I'm like, because it's such a fine line between helping out and rules lawyering, and you're just and it's tricky when you're just like, it doesn't work that way. That's not a bonus action. Because you're so quick,
and you're like, oh, okay.
You're so quick when it's when you're the GM. You're so quick to say, well, that's not really how that spell works. It works like this, unless it's really cramping on somebody's fun. But if it's a mechanical thing, but the GM's got a lot going on, and if you're a player, sometimes it's hard to find that balance of am I being helpful or am I being annoying? It's the tricky one, and that's still something that I try and work towards.
And I think it's interesting you say that, because I think also as the 3 of us demonstrate, everybody has different styles and different approaches. I'm very fast and loose with rules. And I do have a couple of players who are GMs, and I say, oh, this kind of works that. And for me, and because we have a fairly good relationship, I feel it's easy to say, okay, so we're going to go with this in this situation. How do you feel when you're playing with the DM, and I don't know if you do or not, who has a very different style to your own?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question. I think once you've established what their style is and you have lots of faith in that, then you can really settle into it and get used to it. I think Jared's I really like the way that Jared goes about his GMing, and he's quite loose with a lot of the rules, and then there's certain ones that are very mechanical that he sticks in with. So that's sort of like that's knowing which ones, having played and DM'd for Jared for so long, knowing which ones are which in the game makes it much easier to me to find that line in the because if you've got a player who doesn't realize that Healing Word is a spell slot, for example, and it's like, oh, you've used that a few times. How many spell slots do you have left? And then it's like that's sort of the kind of thing that can, if it keeps going on, it's a little crazy to not speak up and say, oh, this is actually how that works.
That just comes down to communication again. It's like, okay, well, guys, I'm the dungeon master. I get the final say. This is my referee, or this is someone who's and like that's part of like it's an advanced game mastering thing, delegating roles within the roles that you play. Having a rules interpreter or a rules lawyer is actually a great benefit. But like you said, Ben, you do it in a respectful way. And I liked also how you just said when you have that faith in the GM. So like embracing their play style and kind of honing into it and being like, look, I get that that's your decision and this is how you run it. And if you lean into it and if you allow it to happen, you're going to have more fun. Whereas if, but obviously there's going to be a point where it's like, man, they're actually kind of completely ignoring the rules and doing whatever they want. I don't feel like I have structure. Where do I lean on? Like, if I can't lean on the fact that I've created a spellcaster with so many slots, and that's my fun as resource management, and then the DM's like, oh no, that's cool. You can use that a bunch of times, but also how is that fair? It's like, do you, are you going to be fair to everyone?
I think that's a really interesting point, because one of the things that I like to do is kind of slowly boil new players. And I don't mean that literally, in terms of applying the restrictions about rules. So if I have very new players, I might let them be fairly fast and loose with their spell slots if they're playing a cast. If they're a brand new player and they're playing a caster and they've just jumped into a level 5 game, I'm not going to burden them with that. But if I've got things. But if I've got guys like this, like Ian, Jared, yourself, you're all in the game, absolutely you need to manage your spell slots and manage your items, and you're not going to use that item without attuning to it first.
But that's part of the fun for me. That's that hits the deck building side of my brain. Is just scratching that itch of making sure that you're managing your stuff. We've had sessions where we've not even played. We've just been discussing what materials we need to make it across this long journey and planning out all of the expenditure. That's just I love that, and just how much gold goes into it. So it's I think
you're gonna love running Dragonbane with me. It's gritty.
I can't wait.
Smart.
I think for new.
Go on, sorry.
For new DMs, and if you're playing, my recommendation would to be not to bring up any of those things unless you've discussed it with them prior, because you can really take away the worst case scenario is that the other players will look to you for advice on things. And you don't want to be the player sitting at the table where everybody's turning to you to say, how does this work? It's okay if the GM turns to you, but the other players should be turning to the GM. So discussing that with the GM before they go in, it's like, do you want me to help you out with rules, or do you want to just have fun with it? And you can go from there. But if you haven't had that discussion, just stipulate. It's just let it play out
on the table. You can be the font of knowledge, but not necessarily the adjudicator.
Anybody asks you, ask them.
Do you think that comes with experience, though? Because I know having had some, I would say, relatively new DMs become players and perhaps not make that adjustment well. Whereas I can think of a couple of players I've got in my game, one in particular who's done a lot of DMing, had that conversation with me and sort of brings it up every now and then when we get new players. It's like, are you happy for me to step in and explain things? Or you'll be running the game and they'll message you on Discord and you've got 3 different messages going and it's very hard to juggle, but it's doable. But they're still asking. Do you think that's an experience thing or like an emotional intelligence thing?
I think you can achieve it with either. I think it's a lot easier to achieve it through experience. It's kind of hard to learn that through the other way. But I've had players who have immediately taken to it, and then ones who have got it over time, especially when they've been put in those situations. And I've been in situations at the table where players have turned to me instead of the GM, and it's not I don't think it's a good feeling. Maybe that GM was fine with it, but it didn't sit right with me. So I've tried to avoid that ever since.
Yeah,
that's a really good point, because it does I mean, I haven't seen that happen often, but I can imagine it could be awkward for sure for the person running it. So I guess, I mean, actually just opening it up to all of us here, like just experiences, as we're all talking about this now, have we had specific experience we remember as well, where there's been a moment where you felt like, oh, the GM needs some help here, or there's a point here where I can help support this player, or you can see that it's going to help the GM if I help this player. Have either of you guys done that as well, or had that experience?
Fatal Gaming in the chat was just kind of asking something along that thread, which is like, how can we make more DMing more fun, or something for the DM? To make it easier, like how can we, along the mindset of like, how can we make more DMs? Now someone figures that out. I guess, like, I don't know, like there's definitely been, not for me personally, I feel like I've always run under someone who's somewhat experienced, someone who, again, like I come in with a trust, but I would also, like, if I was running for a newbie DM, or playing for a newbie DM, I would be like, right, how much feedback do you want? What kind of feedback do you want? Do you want help? Do you want guidance? Because also people have maybe played other previous editions and then they're coming into 5th edition. I know that I've dealt with that before. And they're like, oh, I guess you get like a +2 modifier to this. And I'm like, whoa. In 5th edition, advantage, disadvantage is a thing. And so we all get to learn together. And I think that would be a wonderfully useful thing, is if, people did want to take up the DM mantle, do a one-on-one with a DM that you know, like, and trust, do a very small group of people and just keep it super basic. Like, oh, there's a village, there's something to go and hunt, or something that's, attacking the village, go and resolve that. That's all you need to do, because you just need to get familiar with the idea of the conversation happening the other way around. And then where and how difficult do you set dice rolls and challenges and things like that? I think for me, that was probably the biggest challenge of learning was, wow, I get to just make up a difficulty class. There isn't like a giant tome of difficulty classes for when I
always did it late.
As they're making the roll.
Yeah. I'd be like, roll this. And then they'd tell me, I got a 16. I'm like, oh, I need to come up with what the DC is. Oh, yeah. And then you're like, should it be an 18?
For me, it comes down to like, do I want this to resolve or not? Or do I feel like it would, like, what's the better storytelling thing? Is it's like, should I make this shockingly difficult? I rolled a 20. Ooh, okay, well, you barely slink by. Oh, okay, so now there's a level of threat. Or is it's like, I hate it when players go, oh, never mind. And I go, no. What did you roll? If you rolled, if you rolled a 4, but you had +2, and then maybe someone gave you guidance, and then you could have inspiration. It's like, oh, we could turn this back around. Don't get defeated by these low rolls.
It inspires you on what the outcome is. Like, did you get a 2 or did you get an 11? Like, let me know so I can. I really like what Fatal said in the asking the DM about how to make it more fun, because that way you're not going in assuming that they need help.
That's a really good point.
I really like that approach, and I'm going to steal that and say it was my own Fatal.
Hey, we're a community. We share everything.
We're the hobby and already inspiring game masters around the world. Thank you, Fatal, for joining us. Amazing.
I think it's interesting. So I guess thinking of my experience, I don't think I have been a player with someone who is just starting DMing, but I have had people starting out DMing streaming, because I do a lot of streamed games. And I think that was interesting. So I just offered to sit in on one of my friends' streams and just mod for them. So just trying to take off some of that load. And I feel like that's what I do when I play. Like with you guys, I feel like I try to I know what I know where I'm in the initiative. I know what I want to do. So when it comes to my turn, I know what my spells do if I ever play a spellcaster. And I know what I want to do to try and keep the momentum. And reflecting on that actually is how I like to run games, because my style is one-shots. If I were going to do a shopping episode, we're doing it in downtime in the Discord. We're not playing through. I'm sorry. It's not my style. But it is so I think that's something that I think that I do is I try to move the story along, similar to what you were saying, Ben, is I try to keep the story going and help us resolve any times we get stuck. was trying to think the last time I've played. I think, God, when was the last time I played?
Oh boy.
I mean, I think one game, it wasn't with Ian. I think it might have been with some amazing, beautiful Kiwi streamers and players.
Nice.
And it was either in a combined Mass Effect game run using 5e. It was fantastic. Or a game we played with Purdy, who was a regular chatter, and Dungeons and Drunk Tarts. But again, I think reflecting on that, I try to move the story. But yeah, I think that's what I bring. And it's a reflection of my DM style is I like the story to keep moving.
As a player,
it does reflect it, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I think as a player, you want to do both. Like obviously you're there to try and get you're there to get something out of the experience, right? It's a social thing, but it's also an entertainment thing. So if you get to interact with your cool, amazing, wonderful episodic story that you're creating with a bunch of friends, like at the same time, I think, Ben, when I played in the Waterdeep game as so briefly as I did, I was always thinking, right, I've kind of read through a little bit of the module, so I just wanted to play with some of the fun elements. That's where I was coming from. So I think you very quickly went into that. I was trying to romance some of the NPCs and stuff, not in that weird
some
way,
of
like,
wait. Is this going to be a discussion for another time? All of the NPCs?
No, but also it's
any NPC with long hair was at risk. It was basically the
fantastic.
But and I was always looking for those moments, but obviously not in a spotlight stealing way. It's like, okay, well that NPC is doing this, and if I was to suddenly go, yeah, no, that's tragic. Hey, that's not only like detracting from what the DM's trying to achieve, which is present a plot and a story, but that's also like, oh, you guys can't interact with it. This is my thing now, and that's the challenge that I have I think as a player is like, how much do I want to do things? How much can I do a cool fun thing? I like to do reckless, stupid things, but also like for me it's always like sharing the spotlight. I don't want to talk too much or too little. And I feel like I have less of a perspective over the whole thing when I'm playing, because I'm constantly thinking about what my player would want to, what my character would want to do, whereas as a DM I just get to juggle all those elements constantly. So that's where I feel most comfortable, is when I do get to oversee what's happening more holistically.
How about you, Ian? Do you have any experiences along those lines?
Actually, I've got a long-term playing group who just in the last year, but two of the players actually ran a kind of a one-shot. It's like it's never one episode; it's always over a couple of sessions. But anyway,
one shots are never one shots.
No, I know. So, like the majority of the guys are mainly players, and I've played with them we just had our 5th anniversary. Playing as a group, and most of them are players. And one of them, who was the first one to run a game for us, he had played outside of here with a bunch of others and was keen to play, and he played in older editions as well, whereas most of the guys were 5th edition Dungeons and Dragons. And I said, great. And that I love that question as well. Thank you. In the chat, whoever brought it up as well. I think I'll be borrowing that as well. How can I help was exactly the question I asked. I said, because I can play as well. Where do I fit in? And he said, thank God, I've got this whole story idea. Can you play this character?
I love that. I love that so much.
And I said, sure. I mean, I was like, how much do you want me to lean into and to lead in when it comes to rules? How much do you want me to step back and be outside of it? I think that's also the experience I have. Is also we have the person in the chat who's got performance background as well.
Yeah,
me too.
Fatal Gaming.
And I kept thinking that as like, how much do you want me to add into the story? How much do I just stay out of it and just keep it open for others to have a chance to play? And I swear that's from the experience of like, I just want this guy to make it as easy for you to run this as possible, because he was nervous as it was just for the group, because it's the first time we ran it for that group. So that was one, and that went really well. And then the other one was for he's DM'd a couple of times with some others as well. First time he done with us, it was with a different game, which was it's called Forgotten Lands, I think it is, which we had a go of. And so it was all new rules for everyone as well. And I just like, if there's anything as well? And he was like, pretty good. I think I'm pretty good with everything. And so he kind of was a bit more, he was happy to take it on. And also his girlfriend as well, who's one of the instigators of the group as well, was kind of supporting him there too. And so I said, okay, I'll step back and I'll play. And because I was still getting to know the rules as well, which is interesting. So I thought all I'll do is if it's all right, I'll ask questions about the rules, like how does this work and does this help? Like, is this what I do? If I want to do this, how would I do that? And just so that it would also help explain it for the others as well, is all I could think of. Yeah. So I think that's part of it, is because also with a few of us, I'm not sure for you, Ben, as well, if you've run a lot of games for new players. Have you done that, or is it
less so now? I usually play with newer players. It's more often than not. I've had a pretty amazing group for a large number of years. I generally try and keep it to one game that I'm DMing at a time now. I did try and take on more, like I said before, but you just burn out. So it's a mix. So it's generally, and that's I think how I know that I can help without towing that line. It's just helping new players with their characters. On that front, if I have a question, if I may, when you guys, and this is more like as to your characters, when you guys play in the games, do you find that you're putting yourself into supportive roles more, or are you going because?
Good question.
Because I feel like you're trying to support as a whole, and I feel like that can kind of bleed off into your characters sometimes as well. I'm just thinking of the characters that I've played, and a lot of them take on that support role rather than being the.
I would say, I'm just trying to think of the last characters I've played. I've played a cleric, Artificer, who was very much a support. That was our level 20 game, guys.
Oh, yeah.
And that was a background, like a support character.
Yeah.
And then the bard as well, I hadn't really thought about that, but
Just across.
What about you guys?
Jared, how about you?
Generally, no. I like to play rogues, rangers, lone wolves, kind of. I find myself keeping distant from the group, not too attached, but also like I'm prepared to take the risk for the group, kind of a thing. There has been one campaign where I played Wanderer the Warforged Warlock, who was a survivalist kind of wilderness guide, and that I built around utility. Because we were doing Death Curse, Tomb of Annihilation. So I was like, well, welcome to the jungle. I'm going to do all of these things and be very helpful. To be perfectly transparent, though, I was invited into an ongoing game. And so I think I might have engineered a character that wasn't like suddenly going to try and be the protagonist or anything. I was like, hey, guys, I'm going to be supportive. I checked in with the DM. They were like, oh, we're just done the dinosaur races. Spoiler if you're going to run Tomb. And they were like, and we're about to start diving into the jungle. And I was like, okay, cool. And I love Warforged. I'd never really played a Warlock before, so dove into it. And then very much found myself kind of not being like the mother of the group, but definitely kind of being like, guys, this is dangerous. We should press on kind of.
Even though you're not a supportive role, you're taking on a supportive role. In
that instance, absolutely. Because you don't have to necessarily be a support or a specific role, but you can always be a fan of everyone else and be very encouraging and be like, that was cool. Let's do that. I will help you do that. Whatever your means are, doesn't mean that you have to play a support engine, like a support focused build or anything.
What about yourself, Ian?
Yeah, it's funny you were saying that, Jared. I was sort of thinking, because when have I played that first game I mentioned before, where I played, basically that was a 20th level game. This is for the guy who's run lots of these, and he asked me to support it. So it was like a one shot, and I was like, okay. So in secret, I wasn't just a wizard, but I was also a wizard I had a very clear role though. So it's hard to talk about that because I knew exactly where I was meant to be. So that made it easier because I had the experience. For this other game, the newer one, and it was a different rule set. All I could think of was I And this reminded me of the AI game where I played the Turtle Ranger, I think it was as well.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun to play.
Yeah.
I kept thinking, whatever the rules are, I want to get to know them. That's it. And I want to flex it really with the GM's help. I just keep thinking that's all I want to do is just to go, wow, how can you do this? And I'm very curious in the game style play. That's me. So I'll try different things just to see how they work. And that's in the playing with the rules style and also what the character can do. But when it comes to the in-game, the social side of it and how that works, I can't help but think of, I want to have a character who's easy to get along with. And not that there's anything wrong with being the lone wolf, because goddamn, I love a good lone wolf character to play as well. And also the wild card, that's a whole other thing, but it depends on the game. But I keep thinking for someone, particularly if I don't know them, I think it's like if there's an uncertainty of, okay, new person, new group, how do they work? I thought, going to make it easy. Yeah. I want to have someone I can have that's engaging and also engaging with the other characters also because then you can help prompt through the social side of things rather than the rules, just to say, wow, what's that you're carrying on your back? That is amazing. Whatever it is, just to have that kind of thing when we have those moments of kind of social interaction. Yeah. And it is a hard thing to juggle though, isn't it? Because you don't know a group necessarily and how people are going to be with each other. So that's the thing I'm interested with all of us here. On that note, I just wanted to mention one thing, because we did bring up the 20th level game. So Ben, I don't know if you got to see this. This was last year. We did online and it was a 20th level game. It's hilarious because Jared, you said you played the lone wolf. You were the paladin lone wolf. Didn't say much. But he did. He spoke with his actions. And it took up but you actually continued to try and help support the story as you went along as well. And Thea, you were always trying to help support the story. I could see that so much. And it was so appreciated, guys. I loved it. And Steve as well, and Sarah as well. Yeah. Really, that was fun. It was good to see that too, because I knew you guys were GMs, but it was more actually you're unconsciously just running the game. So it's just when little things like that come in as a GM, it's just so awesome when someone's like, well, I'm interested in what that thing over there that you was brought up before is. I'm going to start heading over there. And you're narrating, but you're also saying, I heard what you said, and I'm going to have a look at that, and I'm going to try this. And it's like, yes, okay. Because you're kind of finding a groove, isn't it? You're trying to get, where do we find the groove of storytelling together? Where's that sweet spot in between GM and player? Yeah. I don't know where that was going. Just wanted to bring that up. It was really nice.
Can we still access that video?
Yeah, we actually.
Did we record
it? We do. It's on my Twitch channel on OMGM. So yes, that does still exist. It is out there. I will post a link to OMGM. Yeah,
nice. I'll check it out.
And there may be a chance it might be coming back. Who knows?
There may be a sequel.
There might be a sequel.
Sounds so cool.
But this is actually brings up a question that I did want to ask is, and I think that this was reflected in that 20th level game, but also in the game with the AI DM that we had. When you get a chance, Ben, to play with a DM who you trust, who you've played a lot with, and can you ever feel that you let go of of consciously being the help and can just go, I'm just a player. I am going to have just
great question.
Oh, totally. I mean, like from my first game, my default mode is just like immersion into the game. So it's I can definitely still get into it and just let my guard down. But like I said, like the way things work and how things interact with each other, it scratches that deck builder mindset that's part of the massive enjoyment for me as a player and a DM. So I can still heavily get into and just relax in the game. And that's, I think, often that's where it becomes where I'm towing that line where you're like, you're super relaxed and you're just like, oh, but it works like this. And you're like, oh, no, rate it in. Like, just chill. Just chill. But I find that I often, on the characters one that helps guide that, like creating characters, I'm often trying to make characters who are good at one thing. It's not heavily optimized. It's like, for example, the character that I'm currently playing in Jared's game knows a load of languages. Just that's their thing. It's just languages. It's like 16 languages. Wow. Like it's not optimized at all. They're good at languages, and this can all be achieved by a second level spell. But I wanted them to know it, and their thing is like, you don't know a language unless you've learned the language. Like when you go to a new person, they're not going to treat you the same if you cast a spell to speak with them. That's sort of like their thing, and that app. yeah, totally. It's a different experience, and that having that one thing lets you narrow in on the one thing that you do and allow everybody else to then expand on other things. Because if you take someone who's good at everything, which I think there's totally ways that you can build that are going to be good at a whole bunch of things, it's a lot harder for you to rein yourself in at those in those moments where you're like, I could do this better. Like my character's got +6, like something like that.
That's very cool.
I felt that in our level 20 game as well. Like again, like I'm a strong believer of if you're going to play, especially like a new class for the first time, build it up from a pretty low level, play a couple of games, get used to your bread and butter skills, learn from that. Whereas I think when we sat down, I do always have a little bit, like I never have anxiety running as a game master. I always, once I'm sit down and I've got all my shit set up, I'm like, let's go. And I just fall into a rhythm. As a player, I always go, oh, do I know what I can do? Am I going to miss something? That's why playing with Ben's super fun, because he's always going to keep tabs on me, and I value that and I appreciate that. So with the level 20 game, I actually had like a few things that was like, do the epic thing. You swing sword really good. Remember, you have divine smite, kind of a thing, and that's what I need to do, because otherwise I'm not so much. I guess similar to Ben, like I find myself immersed, and I'm like kind of like watching with the story and like what can I do with the player, the elements and stuff. And then when it comes to interact with that has to happen through your character sheet a lot of the time. Like all of the social, the talking, I can be in character. I can do all of that. I can describe how I charge across the battlefield and I swoop up the totem or whatever it is. But when it comes down to like a specific skill, I'm like, oh, I got to make sure that I do this right, and like I got to keep track of my spell slots. But that is also fun for me. I love resource management. I love survival kind of games. For me, that's what, like, I always have this overarching, like, the dungeon run is such a perfect way to do role-playing games, because it is resource management, it's exploration of the unknown, and all of those challenges should provoke the social side of things. But I feel like role-playing games have just taken such a specific direction these days, where it's all about the story. It's all about how interesting can the characters be, like where do we go? Do we go to an exotic place, and do we do something epic and heroic, where there is nothing wrong with a good spicy dungeon run. Not a mega dungeon like Mad Mage that Ben is.
I'm doing Mad Mage right now. Loving it.
And I love that when he sends me just random screenshots of his roll 20 and he's just like, and I'm like, nice.
I think that's so rare to have. Like, I think I've seen it explained by people before, where like talking to somebody about D&D is like telling them about your dream that you've had. And I think it's really great to find somebody who's not, because you're saying something and they're like, oh, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. It's not, even if they're interested in D&D, but they're not in your campaign, they're not experiencing it with you. So to find somebody like Jared, who I can talk to about myself, and we're both interested in what is going on in each other's games that we may or may not be part of, is I think really strong and rare. So hold on to those people if you find them.
Yeah, it is something that happens in the community where a lot of people will say, oh, and this happened in one of these games. Like, this is a really cool thing. And it's like, you do the courtesy a lot and you're like, yeah, no, I get it. And sometimes it is. Like, sometimes you're like, oh, okay, that was one of those amazing D&D moments. But there's definitely, there's definitely a lot of discussion of like, this was this really cool thing. And it's not the same as like, oh, did you see that episode of The Witcher the other night? You know, because there's no opportunity to go and check that out. Yeah, like if somebody said, man, you got to check out The Witcher, this cool thing, like this crazy wizard, like all of this, you're like, okay, cool. I can now, if I feel invested enough by the way that that's been relayed to me, I can go and check it out and experience the fullness of myself. You can never do that with this. Even if I said,
unless
man,
it's
I've run Curse
streamed.
of Strahd, unless it's streamed, or unless like, Curse of Strahd, and it's like, okay, well, I really hope to play in that, like all of our current group. Ben, I'm so glad I did that one shot because I was not prepared to do Strahd again for everyone. Like, I apologize to everyone in my squad group. I'm halfway through running it for a third time, and as much as it is so close to my heart, I don't really even want to run Dungeons and Dragons next. Like, obviously, we're going to dive into Avatar role-playing game, as in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah,
A lot of people at Free RPG Day, they're like, there's an Avatar thing, like you can be a blue person, and I'm like, I know the Avatar.
yeah.
I'm
Nice.
sorry.
So I just want to expand, do other things, and like, forgive me if that's.
There's so many cool systems out there.
Yeah.
When I talk about Curse of Strahd, and I'm so passionate about like these amazing things that happen, people like go, oh man, can you run that for me? And I'm like, I can run a one shot.
That's something I want to bring up actually, because you said, I know the whole thing about like The Witcher and having a talk about TV shows or films or stories that you've seen that, that are recorded and stuff that you can then, what about this? And why did they, and all that kind of stuff, that you can nerd out about. But I swear, because we've done this though with Curse of Strahd, I think there've been particular games that DMs have run in particular, that's a kind of a language, that's a kind of a shared history. We've talked about some stuff, Jared. I know that we're like, because we know certain things about running the game for that we've had some link with. And I love talking with GMs that I've run the same storyline
at the same dream
differently. And how did you, the same dream? Yeah. But how did you dream it? And it was like, and where did it go? And what choice did you make? And I love that. That's a rare thing, but it is, I think it's kind of funny these days too, because this is probably a different discussion about, let's just say D&D for now. This edition has very much focused on very big, chunky campaign books that come out once or twice a year that everyone kind of involves. And I grew up first edition with modules. And modules were they could be done, in a short amount of time, and they could be linked.
Meant
but
to always be like 16 or 32 pages. Like that was
they were really short.
That
kind of thing.
Just a straight up adventure, and there might have been a sequence, but generally.
Yeah. So if you talk about, I remember doing Desolation or Temple of Elemental Evil, funnily enough, which are very big modules, but they were collections. You would say, you remember the Village of Homelet, and then people would go, oh yeah, did you do this? Or did you do this? And people know about that. That's a shared kind of thing with DMs, which is kind of cool, because then rarely, if you get the chance to play in that game as someone, because this is something we haven't talked about, Ben, I don't know if you've had this experience. If you've run a game, but then you're playing in that very same story, how do you dissociate from player knowledge and character knowledge just to play the game for fun? Have you ever had that experience?
I try and avoid that as much as possible. If I'm honest, I need to not know what's going to happen. Otherwise, I do really just have to take a back seat.
You love immersion. I'm getting that.
I know, man. It's like, otherwise, I got to take the back seat. Thankfully, when Jared runs his games, they're generally so off kilter from what's in the module that it really matters.
Even if you've read it, you didn't know.
Even
that
if you read it, like I read it after and be like, none of this is what happened. But no, I mean. I find that quite difficult. If I've played a game, and I also find it difficult if I'm okay if like a player has played through it. I don't want more than if it's half. I don't want to run that campaign. I don't want it to. I know it'll be interesting to put different spins on it and that sort of thing, but I'd much rather have everybody surprised by things and not have to. Not have to come up with a whole suite of new things to keep things interesting, because you've got the overarching story, for example. That's something that I definitely struggle with.
Yeah, I did that with my Curse of Strahd wrapping, because there was so long between us doing the 2 years from 2016 to 2018, and then a bunch of years later, one of those players had run Curse of Strahd themselves to completion. So that was actually a blast because, again, like that person is just a very good role player as well. Very, very invested in, synergizing and tactics and things like that. So when we sat down as our evening before the big day, he came to me and he said, hey, like, I would like to do this thing that's now been published for my druid since we last played. And I went, yes, because Rule of Cool trumps this whole weekend. And he did, and it was epic, and that meant that person got a lot more fun out of it. But also, as we were running through Ravenloft, I need to actually ask that person, what was it like when you've been through Ravenloft, Ben, I could ask you, hang on a second, Ben, what was it like running through Ravenloft for a second time? This isn't related, but Ben.
Second time? I mean, that because that was the example that I gave earlier of like the keeping things on track, because it's a one shot. Like we got to keep this on. We can explore this castle, but like we're not gonna get to the cool part. Like let's go introduce ourselves to Strahd first.
Sorry, guys. Let's go.
Yeah. But no, I think it's different when it's one shot sort of thing, because you're just reenacting the best parts of that campaign. And I would really, I'd enjoy playing through Strahd again, just because of how different Jared's campaign was and how much of a different approach that we took to it. But I know I play quite a little bit closer to the module than Jared does, or run quite a bit closer. I still change quite a bit, but I generally change and then I go back on track, whereas Jared goes off track and then sees where that track goes, which I think is really interesting. So I think I'd still get a lot of thrill out of playing it again.
Yeah, Curse of Strahd is engineered that way. Like the 5th edition retelling of it is certainly engineered for unique experiences. There's so many areas that you can explore. I've completely left out werewolves in one playthrough. I've completely left out Argynvost Holt in another playthrough. And like how much do you lean on each potential path and thread? In my current running, Irina Kaliana, the reincarnation of Strahd's love, is kind of gone by the wayside. Kind of gone by the wayside. Well, he believes, has kind of gone by the wayside in this campaign, because we've found our own groove, we found our own rut, and they're just spending hella time in Vallaki trying to do the whole political tension thing that I never really dove into there. So, it's just so open to
I'd love to run it now.
I would love to plan it.
After playing through it.
Good.
Is that? And I guess so. That's an experience you've had with Strahd. But has there been any other games that you played, like published modules, and then you're like, actually, I would love to run this?
Yeah,
And I ask this as someone who runs an awful lot of homebrew.
Yeah. That's it. Is like I've played in quite a bit of homebrew, and yeah, I mean, majority of the ones have been homebrew, and then there's we did Eberron, we did through a little bit of Descent into Avernus, did this one. I can't see myself running any of those. I think because they were so unique in the fact, but the Strahd world is just so exciting, and you can do it in so many different ways that I think that's the one that really sings to me. I've still not played or run Tomb, and I refuse to look at it just in case somebody wants me to be a player in it. But I would totally love to run it as well. So it's like when that opportunity comes up, either way, I just haven't looked at it. I don't know anything about it. I just want to be excited because I know that's a game that I'd be very excited to play or run. So just keeping it completely out of mind. And there's dinosaur racing? That's wild.
We should do odd and even chapters, Ben, and just wing it.
Yeah. I feel like that's like that drawing where you start a drawing and somebody finishes it and you're like, what is this?
Don't read ahead. Just literally like you pick up and go, okay, we're going to get here. And
what could possibly go wrong without knowing the conclusion?
I was going to mention something before. The original Curse of Strahd, Ravenloft game, first edition as well. I don't know if this is relevant, but anyway, it was actually meant to be replayable. It was actually the whole card reading. The whole card reading means that there are certain things that you can pick up as the keys along the way. They found in different places, which means basically it's kind of a hunt to get the things to destroy them, and you have a limited amount of time. So it is replayable, which is interesting. And that means as another player or a DM playing it again, you could go, I want to give it a go. Where is it going to turn up this time? And how do we do it? And that could be pretty fun. So that could be
Dragon Heist, really, with the multiple villain choices. And everything. Unless you're doing the Alexandria.
I like Dragon Heist for that too.
That's really cool.
That was intense. He did a lot of work on that.
I just know, like, this is really interesting, but it feels like we're now turning into a let's discuss modules discussion.
Yeah, I know.
Which is 100%.
Where's the player to keep us on track?
Yeah, too many DMs. We need a player, but we are starting to run out of time.
We're out of time anyway, I think.
Wonderful as this chat has been. Are there any final thoughts that you wanted to share with us, Ben, about being a DM and becoming a player, or living in the strange liminal space of both?
I mean, I think just going in with the mindset that you're, as the GM, you can, I think when people are going into player games, it's often the GM can kind of get a little bit forgotten in that this is their enjoyment as well. And I'm not saying that's happened a lot in my games, but I know that happens in a lot of games that happens. And I think if you go in as a player where you've got the GM in mind as well, because the players are going to have a blast because they've got a great GM with them. But you can look up for the GM and be that person who's making sure that they're having fun as well. And Fatal, I think just going in and asking them, is there anything that I can do to make you have more fun with this is elite. That's awesome.
Yeah, awesome. I think that's
really cool.
That is really cool. That is a beautiful point. Gentlemen, my most excellent companion GMs. Any final thoughts? Ian?
Yes.
Yes, I have thoughts.
Jared, how about you?
I also.
Mainly from this, I really love that question that came up from before. How can I help you in running your game? Because I think that's we've got such experience as GMs. It just really helps when you've got players who are like players who've done it or who have that experience and can go, what's the area you want more in the getting the group to work together, or is it rule support, or is it just being on hand, that kind of thing? And I love that. It's great. And so it's like,
let's encourage more DMs to take up the mantle in a supportive, culturing, constructive format. I think like reaching out to people in your groups and saying, hey, it's not because I want to play or I don't want to DM anymore. It's like, hey, I've definitely actually done that with people. I've said, I really think you'd make a great DM. And from that have spawned, that their own groups and they've gone on and done amazing things. And that's been absolutely wonderful. And then also just providing those opportunities and being like, hey, maybe I don't feel like running this week or something else has come up. Why don't we do a one shot? Does anyone want to run something? And giving opportunities for a group that everyone's already familiar with, that's already supportive and already fantastic. And then being able to go like, right, well, it's not your turn, but it's your opportunity to step up and try something. And it's not always going to be for that person, but doing it in a really supportive way, be very encouraging, and then do all of these cool things that we've just discussed. If you can't remember, just listen to it and rewatch it again. Do all of these fantastic supporting things as a player, and whether you're a GM as a player or not, try and take some of this on board, because I really think that we can all just have better games when we're thinking cooperatively, not just in terms of storytelling, but also elevating each other and our skills, as it would be both as players and game masters. So
absolutely. Thank you all. This has been amazing.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you all. Thank you so much.
It's been a blast, Ben. Thanks.
Yeah, it's so much fun. Time just flew by.
It always does. But no, it's been an absolute pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for sort of sharing so much of yourself, and I'm sure you're doing games, but sharing much of yourself with us. It's been a real pleasure.
Right.
Gentlemen, we're going to be on a break. We are going to break.
That's the end of season 2.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that was season 2. Bam.
You brought me in for the finale? That's wild.
It's been a blast. We're going to be back. We're going to have a bit of a break so we can rejuvenate, who can absorb some stuff. We can play some games potentially. Who knows? And then have some chats. We've got some ideas about what we're brewing, how it's looked. We're looking back. We're going to look forward, and we're going to prepare for season 3. Early August. We'll do some posts in the weeks to come, so you'll get a bit of an idea. But looking forward to that.
But yeah, join us on the Discord, join us on Facebook, join us on YouTube. All of those things that people do. Thank you, everyone who's been with us for this season. It's been wonderful having everybody in chat. Thank you for all our workers.
Thank you, chat guys.
Thank you for everybody who comes and watches the VODs. We are trying to build a community, and you guys are making it a super wonderful experience. But thank you all. We love you. Do the thing.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, Meverence has only been stalking this whole time.
Keep talking role play.
Bye.
Keep talking role play.
I think I meant was press the button.
Right.
See you.